Welcome to Healthy Lifestyle with Lori Anne. I am Coach Lori Anne, America's #1 take action success coach and strategist, empowering, educating, inspiring, and igniting people to take action with jet propulsion. We assist people to find and embrace their life purpose, live their highest vision, become the best version of themselves, forging a strong foundation and soaring to success. For more information on how to work with us, please visit myself and my team at ldcstrategies.com. Today on our show, I hope you're having a great day today. We are going to give you some caffeine to light you up with possibilities. And we have our friend and guest, Jackie Cara on, Jackie Cara Law. Jackie is a lifelong resident of Long Island. She's a graduate of St. John's University and St. John's University School of Law. She is a mom of 3 wonderful young adults, an avid hiker, which I need to talk to her about, and has been dedicated to helping families plan for their futures while protecting what is most important to them, while avoiding the chaos, confusion, and turmoil when unexpected emergencies arise. And this is one of the reasons why we have her on today. Is I have all kinds of questions that have been asked of me recently. A lot of my friends are dealing with and needing to have information about how do they handle their parents now, because they have become the parents. So Cara Law is committed to making planning for your family simple and accessible. Welcome to the show, Jackie. So happy you're here.
Thanks, Lori Anne. I'm happy to be here.
Oh my goodness. So much to talk about. So let's just tell everybody what Cara Law does.
So Cara Law does everything estate planning. We do elder law, which is what you're talking about, when the adults become the parents,
right.
Which I'm going through with my own parents right now.
Yeah.
And we also do special needs planning, which is how I started my practice. I have 3 daughters. When my twins were born, they had special needs, and that's sort of how I started my practice. And I do all estate planning, so Medicaid planning, Medicaid applications, special needs trusts, and then what people think about most when they think about estate planning: wills, powers of attorney, healthcare proxies, all of that good stuff.
Yeah. So where do we start? First is, how did you become interested in estate planning?
I think it was through my children, really. I was a trial attorney, and then I had twins. And I had twins who were born prematurely, who had special needs. And I realized very quickly I was no longer going to be a trial attorney. Judges don't really like when you say, "I'm sorry, I can't be back on Tuesday." Really, they don't necessarily like that, flexible schedule. And
right.
So when my twins got a little bit older, and my third was born, and my third got a little bit older, I wanted to go back to work, but I wanted to go back to something that was more useful than what I had been doing before. And I wanted to go back to something where I could really focus on families and my own family.
Positively affect.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And there were a lot of families like mine who found themselves with children who would need planning for their futures. Yeah. And I met a lot of families like my own. I realized we had to do some special planning for our own children. And I became very excited about how we could do that and helping other families do that. And I learned a lot about what special education could offer for children and set them off on a good path. And I learned a lot about what estate planning could do for children for their future.
Yeah.
So I started slowly back to work doing things for young families, for young mothers, and helping people really sort of start making decisions that could benefit their families.
Yeah,
because sort of how I got started doing this field.
Yeah, it's because it's a question that comes up. It's like, well, will they be able to hold their own when I'm not here?
Exactly.
Is that question that comes up even when they're still babies in your arms? You're like, oh my gosh, this is a lot. It's overwhelming, and not knowing the answers to those questions. That's where you come in to be able to help them set up for success.
Exactly.
Yeah. Children change everything, right?
Children change everything. Yeah. And being able to help families, even parents who don't have children with special needs, even parents who aren't confronted with those issues, helping them become empowered to make the decisions for their children early on if something should happen to them as the parents.
Yeah. Give me some examples of what people can do,
So every parent can make decisions about who would be the guardian for their children if something were to happen to them. Every parent can make decisions about who would be in charge of their money to help raise those children if something should happen to them. Nobody wants to think about that.
Yeah.
But really, as a young parent, as a young family with children, that's the most important decision you can make.
Yes, sure.
You really don't want to leave that up to the court.
Is that what happens if you haven't designated someone,
Yes.
then the court decides it's almost like probate for your will?
Yes. Imagine what happens if
Yikes.
I hate to pick on mothers-in-law, but now your mom and your mother-in-law or sister and sister-in-law or cousins, now you have fighting over who's going to raise your children.
Right.
Or you have dispute because you haven't said who you would prefer.
Right.
And the same with the money.
Does that count, like when you do godparents? Does that count as
No.
because some people are under the impression that, well, you assign the godparents because they're supposed to take them through their religious
Yes.
standpoint, but a lot of people misunderstand that is not going to protect you in court. So,
It is not.
So mom and mom-in-law could have a fight, or the sisters or the siblings, or
Right.
yeah, families can have little family feuds, and we want to avoid that. I know when my parents did their trust, they did it in a way as best they could to make sure we stayed together, that we didn't fight.
Yes.
That it didn't break the family apart, because I hear lots of stories about how when the matriarch of the family, or the what is it, patriarch?
Yes.
Of the family passes away, everything like blows up.
Yes. And I hear those stories too.
Oh, I'm sure you do.
Yeah,
Share
lots
some.
of them.
No, I'm only kidding.
That's a different episode.
Oh, sorry. I got excited for a second. I turned into Oprah. Could you cry now? No. Yeah. So what are best steps that someone can take? I just want to talk from the standpoint of having children with special needs, without special needs, but now I have a young family. What are best steps? And when is it too soon, or when is it too late? Is it ever too soon or too late to set this up?
It's never too soon or too late. What I would love to see young families doing is starting off with wills, right?
Yeah.
Start off with wills, powers of attorney, and healthcare proxy.
Okay, so let's just stop for a second. So will determines what everything's going to do, right?
Right.
What's the power of attorney?
Power of attorney decides who you empower to make financial decisions for you
Okay.
when you can't, basically. It's an emergency document that lets somebody go to the bank for you.
So how do you protect yourself? Let's just say you give somebody a power of attorney. It's generally a carte blanche power of attorney. How do you stop
Yes.
them from just taking all your money and running away?
Don't give it to them.
Okay. Don't give them the actual paper.
Yes.
Do you let them know that they have the
You
power?
can let them know that they have it. You can let other people know that there is one. Keep it in your important documents.
Right.
And when they need it, they can access it, but don't give them the actual paper.
Okay, so they need the actual paper.
They need the
and they
actual
need an
paper.
original, not a carbon copy.
You could probably use a copy in most instances,
Yeah.
but don't give it to them. Leave it with me. Let people know.
I was going to say, is it
Yes.
good practice to leave it with your attorney?
Yes.
Okay.
And let people know. Like my kids know. Good friend of mine who's also an estate planning attorney did my documents.
Gotcha.
My kids just know if something happens to me, call that friend.
Yes. Yeah, mine do too.
Yes.
It's like, well, it's my financial advisor has all of my will, my
Yes.
all the paperwork and stuff like that. So
And that's all they need to know.
Yeah.
If something happens, call this friend.
call this number. Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting because, the power of attorney thing makes me very nervous. And I know makes a lot of people very nervous.
Yes.
Because you're really giving over your right to someone else. It's like, well, how do you protect it? I turned into my dad. It's like, no, I'm not doing that.
Not signing that.
I'm not signing that.
Yeah.
I'm giving all my authority away. It's like, well, no. How do you protect yourself? Because people say do power of attorney. And then the healthcare proxy.
So the thing that people don't understand about a healthcare proxy, and this is really helpful, is that you're naming someone to make medical decisions for you, right? They can't do anything unless you're basically unconscious.
Oh, okay.
So it's not like a power of attorney.
So if I'm able to talk, I'm
Yes.
always able to talk. That's why I have a radio show. So if I'm able to speak, then I can
Yes.
make my own decisions. But it's when I'm rendered unable to do that. Unable
Exactly.
to do that. Okay. All right. So that's a really good distinguishing between the three different things, because a lot of people confuse them. And we're going to get into trusts and other things because there's a lot of questions about that too. But so I have a young family. They want to prepare. What do you recommend?
I recommend that a young family start out with a will.
Okay.
And you start out with wills because a will can say, this is who I'd like to be guardian of my children, and this is who I would like to be trustee of the money that I'm going to leave behind to take care of my children. Because your children can't take assets, right? You don't want your 3 and 4-year-olds getting lots of money or any money.
They'll buy toys.
Right. And you probably don't want your 19 or 20-year-old getting a lot of money because we call that the Corvette clause.
Yes. Oh, that's perfectly named. Yes.
So, you probably want to set up a trust until the kids are old enough, 25, maybe 30, where a trustee is saying what the money can be spent on.
Right.
They can pay for college, and they can help with an apartment, or they can help buy a car if that's what's necessary. But where there's somebody you trust who's in charge of that money to help take care of the kids.
And they sign everything over. They make the decision, say, yes, you could do that. No,
Yes.
you can't do that. Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
And those are 2 really good things you can do, that you can be empowered to do, to keep that very important decision making in your own court for the benefit of your family.
Now, what if your family doesn't have a will? Something happens to the parents. What happens to the children? What happens to all the assets? What happens then?
Well, then your estate has to go, and your estate doesn't mean you don't have to have a house to have an estate. That's something people are confused by. Whatever you have, your stuff is your estate.
Right.
Right? It's as simple as that.
Right.
Whatever you have is your estate.
But do you have to actually establish an estate, or
No.
it's just all your stuff?
All your stuff.
Okay.
Whatever you got is your estate. And somebody then has to go to court, and you have an intestate proceeding, which is a proceeding without a will.
Okay.
And the court then decides who's in charge, who becomes guardian, who's in charge of the money. The court will most likely set up a trust for the children, appoint a trustee, but the court's going to decide those things.
Predicated on what?
Whoever comes forward and what evidence is given to the court.
Okay.
If there's a fight as to who becomes guardian, the court will decide that fight. The court will decide where the stuff goes. It's basically as simple as that. The court will make all those decisions.
So that goes back to empowering the families. Is
Yes.
if you want to feel empowered, if you want to have a say of how this outcome is, you really want to put it in writing.
Exactly. And, I like to make things simple for people. I like them to understand what their rights are, and I like them to feel empowered, like they're doing the best thing for their families at a time that's already really difficult.
Yeah.
Like, why make it more difficult?
Yeah.
And nobody wants to think about this happening.
Yeah. It took me 3 years to do my will.
Yeah.
Because there were some decisions I had to make, and I didn't want to make them.
Right.
And I didn't know what the right answer was, and I wasn't sure what to do. And finally, I just had to do something, because if I had nothing, that would have been worse.
That's such a great point, and I like that you said that, because what I always tell people to do, because I meet so many people, and that's the holdup. I don't know who to pick.
Yeah.
And I always tell people, pick imperfectly. I'd rather, everything can be changed.
Right.
There's nothing that's written in stone.
Right.
And I'd rather you pick imperfectly than have nothing in place. Pick imperfectly.
Yeah.
And come back to me.
Yeah.
In 2 years or 3 years, as the kids get bigger, as you have more kids, as you have more money, come back to me.
Right. We can always adjust it, but at least you have something.
We can always change it. We can always add to it. We can always amend it. It's very easy to do.
Right.
But have something. Make some decisions.
That was tough. It was so tough.
Yeah.
Just making those decisions was, and I know I was procrastinating. I'm like, I don't know. And I kept pushing it. And my attorney at the time was like, are you going to do this?
Yeah.
We got to finish this up. Literally 3 years.
I have a lot of clients in that same position, and I tell them, choose imperfectly.
But the feeling once it was done was empowering. It was feeling like, okay, now I have safety. Now I know my kids are going to be fine. Now I know that my wishes are going to be met. And if I change my mind, to your point, I could just go back and have it modified.
Right.
So, all right. So this is the next one that comes up a lot. So there are living wills, there are trusts. What's the difference? What are best practices? Now we're talking about people maybe older in age, moving closer to our parents' ages. What are best practices, and what's the difference between a living will and a trust?
Okay, so a living will is a medical thing.
Okay.
A living will is a document that says, this is the kind of medical treatment I want.
Okay.
Right? And a living will is something where you say, I don't want to ever be on a respirator, or I do want to be on a respirator, or I want to be on a ventilator, and I don't want chemo, or I do want chemo.
So that's the difference from the health proxy.
The healthcare proxy names the person that you want making decisions, and something like a living will actually expresses wishes regarding what treatment you want and you don't want.
Got it.
And a lot of people don't have a living will. They leave it up to the healthcare proxy. Because your healthcare proxy probably says something like, my healthcare proxy knows my wishes, and I trust, I'm paraphrasing, but I trust my proxy to make my decisions.
Oh my, okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's really what it should be. Because you really don't know until you're there.
Right.
What decisions your healthcare proxy is going to be making.
And what's available at the time.
Exactly.
What was available 20 years ago and available now, huge difference.
Very different.
Yeah.
So when I have people who come to me and they already have a diagnosis, that's a very different thing from a planning perspective.
Sure.
Than somebody who's guessing. Right?
Yeah.
I have had clients who've come to me and they've had an experience that's terrified them. And they never want to have that experience again.
Yeah.
Those are clients who maybe want to write that down.
Yeah.
I had a client who had been on a ventilator and said, I never, ever want to have that experience again. I want that written down. That's a very unique situation.
Yeah, sure.
I have had clients who have come to me with a diagnosis. They're already far down the path of a diagnosis. They know where they're going and what they want.
Right.
And that's somebody where it makes sense to spell that out.
Right.
But for most people, especially when you're younger, something general that says, I've spoken to my proxy and my proxy knows my wishes, you're leaving it to that proxy to understand what's happening in the moment.
Ooh, that's a lot for the proxy.
It's a lot for the proxy.
Because you have to make decisions that you might not want to have to make.
Yes.
Wow. So yeah, wow. Because there's a lot of things that could come up with that.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you ever, as their attorney, do you work with the proxies?
I've had conversations with proxies. I really do recommend that families, and this is sticky stuff. That's a lot of what holds people back in estate planning are these sticky conversations.
Yeah.
I really recommend that people have conversations with their family. But what makes people feel better is those end-of-life decisions, which is what you're referring to.
Yes.
Because what happens with healthcare proxies is a lot of the time, they're there in case you're in surgery and you're under anesthesia.
Right.
And they're making a decision about that surgery.
Right.
And it's not an end-of-life decision.
Right.
It's not these big, scary decisions.
Yeah.
But when you get to end-of-life decision-making, doctors are talking to you about DNRs, about options for treatment. And hopefully they're talking to you with the patient by your side.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're involved in that decision making, and you're having those discussions on an ongoing basis.
Yeah.
And so it's not an all of a sudden big scary decision, although it can be.
Yeah.
If there's an accident or something like that, a sudden illness or an accident.
Yeah.
But hopefully there have been discussions within the family.
Yeah, it's a huge responsibility. When we're going to take a break in a little bit, and I really want to get back. I want to get into trust, revocable and irrevocable, and
sure,
what are the best things to do? When should you do them? Is it am I too young to do it? When do people do that, and what are the best uses for that? But the wishes regarding that living will, is that something, a living will that a young family should do? Or is there like a best practices at a certain age we should have a living will? Or does that goes to have it right at the beginning so at least something's there?
You can have it anytime you want to have it. And I would say over the course of your lifetime, it probably changes.
Right.
It's probably real general in the beginning. And it changes over time. And it, again, goes back to, do you have a diagnosis? Have you had an experience? It's going to change with those things. And
based on the information we have.
Based on the information we have.
That's making a decision any day. You can only make the best decision based on the information you have the day you have to make any decision.
Exactly.
So the next day, everything might change.
That's right.
We're going to take a short break. You're listening to Healthy Lifestyle with Lori Anne, and we're talking to Jackie Cara from Jackie Cara Law, and we will be right back. Welcome back to Healthy Lifestyle with Lori Anne. I am Coach Lori Anne, America's #1 Take Action Success Coach and Strategist. If you would like to lift up your business, your product, not-for-profit, or if you have any questions or concerns or comments, we would love to hear from you. Email us at healthylifestylewithla@gmail.com. That's healthylifestylewithla@gmail.com. We really do love to hear from you, and we answer all of our emails directly. So we're here with Jackie Cara from JackieCaraLaw.com. It's spelled C-A-R-A, and all the information will be with this episode, so you can have a link and get more information from Jackie directly. You're really so wonderful, Jackie. Thank you for being on the show. You're really so approachable and so knowledgeable, and you make me feel very comfortable, and I've watched you speaking to other people about this topic, and you're just so calming in something that is very unnerving for most people. Like, it's not comfortable to have these conversations, and yet you make it seem comfortable.
Oh, thank you.
No, it's a beautiful thing, and it's a real gift, and it's a treat to talk to you about this. So all right, let's get into this.
Okay.
Trusts, irrevocable and revocable. Tell us the difference between the two, and then why we would use which one when and what's appropriate.
Okay. So let me first explain what the difference between a will and a trust is.
Okay.
Because first you want to make sure you're in the right territory.
And do you use a will and a trust, or you need one or the other?
So when you have a trust, you usually also have a will.
Okay.
But it's a special kind of will.
Okay.
I call it an oops will.
An oops will?
An oops will.
What does that mean?
It's a pour over will. But people say, what does that mean? So I say, it's an oops will. And it's a kind of will that basically says, if I've left anything out of my trust, please put it in my trust.
Oh, nice.
Because sometimes, and this will go back to my explanation of the difference between a will and a trust, sometimes people forget to put things in their trust. And they need a place to go when people die.
Right.
I like to use the lottery analogy.
Okay.
At some point after you do your estate planning and you establish your trust, you win the lottery. And you're so excited that you've won the lottery, you forget to call me and say, Jackie, what do I do now? I've won the lottery. So you don't make that phone call. You're busy living your best life with all your lottery winnings, and you just put the money in a bank or something like that, or a yacht in a mansion, or whatever you do with your lottery winnings, and you forget. So now when you pass away, you said
yacht in a mansion. I like had a Bugs Bunny moment,
yes,
so that's why I was smiling.
Yes, exactly. So now when you pass away, you've got a mansion and a yacht and all these other things that you've forgotten to put in your trust. They need a place to go. So the will, the oops will, is so all of those things have places to go.
Okay.
And your pour over will says, put anything I've forgotten into my trust.
Great.
Because your trust is your plan.
Yeah.
Right? So you do have a will, but it's this special kind of will that I call an oops will, but it's called a pour over will.
To me, it looks like if there was a visual on it, it would have one of those arrows that went in a circle and pointed back to the trust.
Exactly. That's exactly it.
Got it.
That's exactly
it. It is a cartoon in my head, by the way, Jackie. Did I ever mention that?
Yeah. But it would be more like Wile E. Coyote.
Yes.
Coyote, like, pointing the anvil over the cliff or something. Pour all this stuff over the cliff and into my trust.
There you go.
So anyway, the primary difference between a trust and a will is a will has to go through probate.
Okay.
And probate means you have to take the will to court. And you have to give the will to the judge, and the judge has to appoint the executor that you've named in the will. The judge has to make sure the will's on the up and up. Basically, the judge has to make sure the will was legally drafted and legally signed. and the judge has to officially appoint the executor in charge of the will. And the surrogate's court sort of follows the distribution of the assets through a probate process. In New York, that can take about a year, so it can be time-consuming.
Yikes.
And it can be a little costly. So a lot of people like to avoid that process. It's also public. So if families come to me and they're disinheriting somebody, or they tell me they have a family member who's litigious and who has contested other wills in the family, they might want to avoid that. So if there's a reason that people don't want their assets to be public, or they don't want people crawling out of the woodwork, they might want to avoid that process.
Got it.
So
Now, if I don't have a will, I go to probate anyway.
if you don't have anything in place, you go to an intestate, which is also a form of probate.
Probate, okay. But that's icky.
That's icky.
Yeah.
That's ickier than probate.
Right, ickier.
It's
more, this level of ick.
It's more icky than probate. So, and probate's not terribly icky. So,
Okay.
you know,
it's just
but
long because
just
of the courts.
Yes. And it can be problematic if family is really relying on the finances that have to go through probate because you're waiting for the money to be released.
So also, is this a standard in all states, or is this mostly like New York-ish, or most states are this way?
Most states have some probate process.
Okay.
So a trust does not have to go through probate.
Okay.
And that's one thing that's attractive to people about a trust.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's revocable or irrevocable, it doesn't have to go through probate, right?
Yep.
So that's the one difference, big difference for a lot of people. The reason people choose to plan with a will is because it's a little easier and it's less expensive. The trust has a price tag on it because it's more complicated to create. And there's also homework associated with creating a trust.
Oh, there was homework with my will too.
Yeah. So when you set up a will is basically a document that just says, this is what I want you to do with my stuff when I die.
Right.
And it's only effective when you die.
Right.
Right? It's instructions
Right.
for after you've passed away.
Perfect.
So you're not moving any assets anywhere. If you own it when you die, great. Here are the instructions. If you no longer own it, great. And you've referred to it in your will, it's just no longer there. No harm, no foul.
Right.
That's how it works. When you create a trust, you're actually putting your stuff into the trust. I always call it a basket.
Okay.
It's almost like creating a corporation.
Yeah.
So when you create a trust, that's the homework I was talking about, is
Got
you
it.
actually have to go through the process. So if you own a home, you're actually now going to own it as the trustee of the trust. You're going to actually move the home into the trust.
And I become the CEO of that.
You become the CEO of the house,
Got
right?
it.
And you're going to move your bank accounts into the trust.
Okay.
And, you know, there's a lot that goes into it that I won't explain now, but that's
Right.
the difference.
Yeah. So everything goes into the trust. You have to name everything by item, or just contents of a house, or blah, blah, blah.
Well, so there's a document where you name the contents of the house to make it simple. So you're not saying, you know, like my coat and my slippers and my
Yeah,
couch,
seriously.
my threadbare rug in the foyer.
Well, the pink thread, but not the black thread.
Right.
But no.
So you don't have to get that specific.
good.
We help with that.
Yeah.
But you move your bank accounts and your investment accounts and things like that into the trust.
Okay.
And, you know, we help you with that.
Right.
But that's the funding process of a trust.
Okay.
So a trust actually contains your assets.
Okay.
So there's a little more homework that some people don't like, find complicated. It's not too complicated, but some people don't like that. And that's why they opt for a will.
Okay.
People opt for a trust because it consolidates your assets nicely for whoever's helping take care of you
Sure.
later in life. So when you create a revocable trust, you avoid probate, you consolidate your estate somewhat. The other benefit of a trust is you can identify who can take care of your assets when you become incapacitated, which is
Okay.
really helpful. So you're basically helping to avoid a guardianship proceeding. So if you become incapacitated, right away you have a trustee
Right.
who's in charge of your trust.
Who's handling the movement and stuff like
Right.
that. So there's no questions.
That's right.
This really, a will and a trust actually eliminates a lot of the questions and the debates and things like that. But a trust, I think, it really puts
Yes.
somebody in charge.
Yes.
Yeah.
Without having to go to court.
Right.
Right.
Because there's a waiting period, too, to go to court to make everything move, which is difficult when you have houses or bills to pay and stuff like that. Who's going to take that over in the
Exactly.
interim? Yeah.
So
Gotcha.
with a trustee, the trustee just basically steps into your shoes is the phrase that we lawyers like to use. You step into your shoes. And the trustee is there when you become incapacitated to start taking care of what's in your trust, right? So it's sort of seamless. And then and the trustee's job is to take care of you with the funds and the assets that are in the trust. And so you continue to live in your house, even though you're incapacitated, if that's what's in your best interest. And the money continues to be spent on you. And then when you pass, whatever your distribution plan is what your trustee carries out.
Gotcha.
And that's basically how a revocable trust works. So while you're alive and well and kicking and dancing and doing all the things you want to do, you're in charge of your trust. And you can spend money and you can sell things and you can put new things in. So when you win the lottery, you want to put the mansion and a yacht into the trust, don't forget. And you can do whatever you want with it.
Right. So, and that doesn't preclude me from selling a house or anything like that? Okay.
No, a revocable trust, none of that is precluded. You do whatever you want with what's in the trust. You're in charge.
Okay.
So when we get into irrevocable trust planning, and again, this is general because there are many kinds of trusts for all different reasons.
Right.
When we get into irrevocable trust planning, the most common irrevocable trust planning that I talk about with people is when I put my elder law hat on. Mm-hmm. And we're talking about Medicaid asset protection trusts. And those are the kind of trusts we create when people are becoming concerned about long-term care. And now we're getting into the sandwich generation conversation.
Sandwich?
Yes. Now we're talking about the kids like you and me who are now worried about what's going to happen to our parents.
Yeah.
And do our parents have enough money for us to take care of them? Do they have enough money if they have to go into a nursing home? Do they have enough money if we have to hire care at home for them on a long-term basis? And that's where Medicaid planning can come in. So a Medicaid irrevocable asset protection trust can go a long way to helping to preserve their assets and extend their assets so that we make sure they have plenty of money to pay for their care. And one of the ways we do that is by moving something like their home into a Medicaid asset protection trust. The beauty of that, it's an irrevocable trust, is they really are giving their home to the trust. They are not the trustees of this kind of trust. Typically, the children are. When it's a home, it's got no income, so it doesn't change the nature of anything. They still live in the home. They still have the right to live in the home. The trustees can't sell the home. Nothing changes in terms of their veterans exemptions or their star exemptions or anything like that. Right. So moving the home is a simple way to protect the home from liens when the second spouse is alive but becomes ill, if the first spouse has died, so the house is no longer exempt from Medicaid. It's a great way to protect the house from becoming available if that spouse has to go into a nursing home. And we can get even deeper into Medicaid eligibility planning by starting to move other assets into that Medicaid asset protection trust.
Is it still 5-year look back or is it 7 now?
Yes, there is a 5-year look back. They've been talking about 7 for quite some time.
Yeah.
But it's still a 5-year look back.
And explain to our listeners what a 5-year look back is.
So a 5-year look back means that if you apply for Medicaid today, Medicaid doesn't, you're going to look at your bank account and say, this is how much money I have to pay for my care. But Medicaid, that's not what Medicaid looks at. Medicaid looks at 5 years of your financial records, and they see what they decide you should have had. So if in 5 years you have given your children money, you have transferred real estate to your children, or to a charity, well, not a charity, that's not a good example, but to your children or to your grandchildren or to a trust, anything to get it out of your name, Medicaid's going to say, not so quick. That should have been available to pay for your care. And they're not going to go get it. They're just going to charge you for it. So if you've given things away that Medicaid feels you should be responsible or you should still have in your bank account, Medicaid's not going to start picking up the tab until you've paid that amount of money towards your care.
Okay, so they don't charge you, but you can't really get the Medicaid
Right.
support from them until you've gone over that number.
Right, and that's
Yikes.
called a penalty period.
Got it.
Right.
Got it.
So they're not going to go, people have all these misconceptions. Medicaid's going to go after my house. They're going to go take the house away from my kids. They're not going to do any of that.
Yeah.
They're just going to say, you're responsible for, if the house was worth $500,000, you're responsible for $500,000, and we're not going to pick up the tab until you've paid that much.
Gotcha.
So that's how the look back period and how penalty periods work.
Gotcha.
So you want to start doing this planning before you're there.
So what's a good age to start putting things in revocable trusts versus irrevocable trusts? And can you flip it from revocable to irrevocable?
You can always move things from revocable trust to whatever you want to. You can take them out of trust. When you're dealing with a revocable trust, you have many, many options.
But Medicaid won't support you if you have that. It doesn't protect any liens or anything if you're in a revocable trust.
No, there's no protection in a revocable trust. That's much more of an estate planning tool to organize your estate, to avoid probate, to help you with that incapacity planning. So that is not a Medicaid tool.
Okay.
But people come to me for revocable trust planning in their 30s and their 40s, maybe in their 50s. When you start coming for Medicaid planning, that's more like people in their 60s, in their 70s,
Got it.
sometimes in their early 80s. But when you have retired and your money starts to even out, the kids are out of the house, they're starting to become self-supporting through their own contributions.
Yes.
You kind of know.
God willing.
Yes.
Yeah.
You kind of know what your financial landscape looks like.
Yeah.
You know what you're going to do with the house. Are you going to stay? Are you going to downsize? Things like that.
Can you sell things in your
Irrevocable trust?
Yes.
So you can downsize. What you can do, though, is you have to keep the principal in the irrevocable trust. So if you live in a big house and you decide you want to move to a smaller house, your trustees, because now remember, you don't own it anymore. You're not the trustee. Your trustees can sell the big house. Your trustees can buy the condo or the co-op or the apartment or the smaller house in the trust, but they have to put the remainder of the proceeds also into the irrevocable trust. So you're maintaining the principle of the
So
trust.
if you sell your house for $500,000 and you buy a new place for $250,000, and I'm laughing right now because it's almost impossible
Yes.
to even buy houses for that price. But if we did that for $250,000, the other $250,000 would have to stay in the trust.
Exactly.
Okay, so we couldn't just use it but we could use it to support mom or dad, right?
You would have to take a distribution as trustees, as beneficiaries.
Is that taxable?
No.
Okay.
And you would have to pay, for example, a nursing home bill directly,
Got it.
or for a new roof directly, but
Got
you
it.
can't give it back to mom and dad.
Okay. Got it. So there won't be any vacations taken out of that.
Yes. That's not the idea. When it's irrevocable, you really want it to stay irrevocable.
So much good information. I know we're just touching the surface of this
Yes.
topic, and you have to come back so we can dive deeper and just focus on one of these many topics that we just brushed over. But I have to get into the question about your hiking. Talk to me about your hiking. Why hiking? I need to know.
I guess I started hiking. I had a lot to do with COVID, like everybody else's hobbies, right? Like, what am I going to do with myself? I have to go outside.
Yeah.
So I started hiking. I started little hiking, and I sort of became obsessed with it.
It's fabulous, isn't it?
It's fabulous. And then, of course, there's hiking for patches. Do you know about this?
No, what is that?
Yeah. Okay, because I'm a nerd, right? So there's hiking for patches. So you can climb a certain amount of peaks in the Catskills that are over a certain elevation, and you can collect patches, and then you get an award, a participation award.
Oh, wow.
And you can do the same thing.
How many patches do you have?
I have quite a few patches.
Oh, my goodness. Jackie, I did not know this.
The pursuit of the achievement started appealing to me because it was something I could do to occupy my mind. It was something I could research. And of course, the gear, I became involved in the gear, the pursuit of the perfect hiking boots, the pursuit of the perfect poles.
Oh, we have to talk.
Yes.
We have to
so
talk.
I have too much gear, but it gave me an activity that was outside, that was safe to be involved in. It gave me a community because I started hiking with different groups and meeting people and meeting the same people.
Yeah.
And it gave me, fitness. And, I was very surprised how strong I became doing it. And I've actually done some longer hikes. I did a week-long camping trip in Utah.
Oh, my goodness.
Escalante, which is it's more of a preserve than a national park, but yeah.
Amazing. Oh, we have to have you come back to talk about that too. Listen, knowledge is power. It's important
Yes.
for people to get knowledge. So go out there, give a call to Jackie Cara. She can help you out, and definitely trust the process, right?
Yes.
Trust the process.
Trust the process.
Thank you all. Thank you for coming on today, Jackie. You are just a wealth of information and so sweet. Absolutely so kind. Thank you all for joining us today on Healthy Lifestyle with Lori Anne. I hope we have earned the privilege of your time. I want to again thank our guest today, Jackie Cara from Jackie Cara Law. Look for our show next Saturday at 3 p.m. on JVC Broadcasting and iHeartRadio. We can also be found on all the major platforms, and we would be so grateful if you please like, follow, share, and subscribe. Until next time, I am Coach Lori Anne, America's #1 Take Action Success Coach and Strategist. Let your dreams be bigger than your fears. Let your life be filled with joy. Have a great day. Can't wait to see you next time. Show up for you and show up big. Have a great week, everyone.